dare turn your blade on me? You dare interfere with that which I have sought for so long? Such fatal hubris. You will pay for that accordingly. Witness how fragile your bonds really are.
Good morning, folks. This is Johnny B here with Ready or Not Gaming. Today I just wanted to take some time and go through the last couple of chapters of Fire Emblem Engage and explain why they are peak in terms of map design. So I know a lot of people have spoken pretty positively about this game, but I'm surprised that there's less content that focuses specifically to the endgame, because the final 4 chapters of this game are really some of the most tactically engrossing challenges I've ever played in a strategy game, not just Fire Emblem. So a couple of disclaimers before I get started here. Number 1, most of the footage I've recorded here is from a normal difficulty run, so a lot of this footage is really nothing like what my initial experience was, except for chapter 26, which I was able to replay on the maddening difficulty. So when you see me breezing through chapters 23 and 24 and 25 on normal difficulty, just know that that's not what my initial playthrough was like. It was a lot more grueling, probably took 10 times longer. Number 2, it's been almost 2 years since I beat the game, and I definitely forgot what the optimal builds and strategies are, especially since playing on normal difficulty, I'm not forced to use them all that much. Number 3, though it's cool how they incorporated narrative elements into the level design, i.e. the Fell Dragon shards affecting the map gimmicks in the first 3 chapters of the endgame, I'm only referring to gameplay in these chapters as peak. As many people found the story pretty forgettable. Now with those disclaimers out of the way, let's get started with chapter 23. This chapter and the following 2 start with some gimmick related to the Fell Dragon shard at the top of the map near Zephyr and Gris. This level specifically starts off with one of the least defensible positions in the game. We have rock formations scattering the map, offering some degree of protection, but within 1 to 2 turns, the lava rocks start falling. With several rocks falling randomly on the map somewhat near your team, each taking up a 9-tile square, your army's positions are impossible to maintain. You're forced to scatter your units to avoid the massive damage that the rocks deal. To make things worse, each lava rock destroys the initially impassable terrain on the map, something that the game's threat detection does not account for. This means that any choke points that were being used or enemy paths that were being blocked could be leveled before you have a good chance to plan for those changes. Now, to add another wrinkle to this gimmick, 3 Griffin Knights are posted deep into the lava pools to the left of the map. Even if you throw Sigurd on Rosado or another flyer, the Griffins are tanky and can easily overwhelm whoever you send over to take care of them. Oh, and I forgot, there's also a trio of Royal Knights in the middle of the map, and they each have freeze staves on them as well. If you ignore the Griffin trio and make a mad dash to Gris and Zephyr, they'll be in position to freeze most of your units in the left cluster within just a couple of turns, just in time for the meteors to land on them. The same thing is going to happen if you try to pull your army right and go up the right side of the map and try to hook around to get to Gris and Zephyr. The Griffin Knights will freeze the back of your army, while the Royal Knights will freeze the front, almost guaranteeing some dead units in the harder difficulties of the game. At this point in the game, you'll have all your emblem rings and should have inherited most of the skills for the builds that you're working on. Like many other chapters in Engage, the developers are definitely planning around your current tool set. They definitely start sending the house at you and force you to abuse all of the broken tools that this game has to offer. That's honestly what I love about this game. They give you 4-tile warps, full team heals, and all other types of broken shit, and still manage to keep you on your toes this late into the game. Okay, so here's what I did on my initial maddening run. After several hours of workshopping first turns, I figured out the best strategy was to build staff accuracy up for Jean and the Somniel, and then on the first turn I activated Micaiah and Jean and used an entrap staff to capture the 3 Griffin Knights and kill them in turn 1. That was pretty much the only proactive decision I made in the entire chapter. I really spent the rest of my turns scrambling to the bosses while frantically dodging out of the way of the meteors. By the time I took out Gris's final health bar, my heart was legitimately racing. Alright, let's move on to chapter 24. So this map separates your team into 3 separate rows, almost like a game of League of Legends. The gimmick is that every 2 turns, an avalanche pushes all units who aren't blocked back to the left side of the map. Not good considering this map has a turn limit. The emphasis on speed as well as managing the choke points that separate these 3 lanes is what makes this map super fun. You're constantly weighing the pros and cons of pushing forward before the timer runs out, keeping your flank clear, and also making sure the avalanche doesn't send your whole squad all the way back to the beginning of the map. There's also ballista units sitting at the halfway point of each of these 3 lanes, complicating things even more. Getting to these ballistae will invariably put you in a tough spot on this map. Do you push someone forward and try to get to them ASAP? You probably should, but that leaves them open to attacks from adjacent lanes. When you finally push past the ballistae, you'll need to continue to find random spots of rock or use obstruct spells to protect your team from the avalanche as you try to get to the final boss. This was a ton of fun for me because of how it felt a lot different from the standard route map that most of the levels in this game had. It was more for a race to the end, forcing you to figure out how to navigate these 3 lanes and the avalanches in order to get to the boss in time. The final chapter in the Dragon Shard gimmick trilogy is chapter 25. I found that this one was a bit tougher than chapter 24, but easier than chapter 23. This map starts with basically 2 closed rooms on the bottom left and bottom right, separating your army into 2 groups. In the left room, there is a freeze staffer right in front of a worm. On the right side, there is an entrap user ready to pull your units directly into the range of another worm. By the time most players get to these 2 staff users, enemies will start spawning from 2 sets of stairs, both in the right and left room. Just before these reinforcements arrive, the map boss will use that damn shard again. Just like the other 2 maps, this one will give you 1 turn of warning before it goes off, dealing a ton of damage to exposed units. Despite all of this, the real fight hasn't even begun until you exit the 2 of the bottom rooms and into the central chamber. As you fight your way into the boss room, an overwhelming amount of reinforcements will keep spawning, and they'll be hot on your tail as you make your way up. The boss room itself is hard enough without all of the enemies at your tail. Another entrapped staffer is waiting with its range at the bottom of the room, in front of the boss's crew. Now moving up, Lumera is posted on a set of protection tiles with her own crew, 2 worms, another entrapped staffer, a freeze user, and 2 mages with meteor. Enough firepower to melt your team before you can even get into attack range. This map shares DNA with the other 2 shard maps. Map-wide nukes that force your units to scatter and enemies ready to abuse that chaos. Whether it's freeze units gluing you into the shard's fire path, or entrappers that can force your whole army to jump into the fray in order to rescue a trapped unit. Where this one differs though is how the forces start to condense as the battle continues. As both halves of your army battle through the 2 rooms on the bottom of the map, enemies are always going to follow them into the main chamber and boss room. This means your flank will always be vulnerable. So yeah, that's chapter 25. I really don't have much else to say about this map, except I lost my favorite unit on the final turn. Rest in peace to Ivy with Cantor and Thoron. You will be missed. Finally, we have chapter 26. This chapter was probably not as expansive or as gimmicky as the previous 3. However, it might be the most visually spectacular in the game, and it also comes with some super unique challenges that make you feel like a genius once you figure them out. Chapter 26 has 2 separate parts. The first one is nothing special, and I'm guessing that most people beat it within a few turns without too much trouble. It does, however, show off one of the coolest maps in the game. Not desert, lava, or snow maps this time. You're transported into a floating ethereal platform in some alternate dimension or whatever. Once you presumably make quick work of bipedal Sombron, the real final battle begins. Fel Sombron is a massive dragon, taking up 16 tiles in the center of the map, basically reachable from anywhere. The catch here, he has a shield on him that makes him invulnerable to attacks until you take out 4 units located on the 4 corners of the map. Now, the bottom 2 of the special emblem units are super easy to kill since your army starts the map pretty much right next to them. The tricky part is making sure you kill all 4 of the units and also Sombron within the same turn. If you don't, this map gets a lot harder. He has a bunch of AoE attacks and can even disengage your units if he isn't dealt with quick. 4 more Dark Emblem units will spawn as well, forcing you to destroy the shield all over again. Now here's the reason why this map is worth talking about. I already mentioned the endgame feel of the purple map. Spectacle aside, I think this map does a great job of letting you abuse the enemy AI to your advantage. This map has quite a few less flying enemies than other chapters. In addition to that, it's just a floating platform with open air surrounding it from all sides. Guess what that means? The enemy army has almost no answer to just rushing one flyer to each of the top two guys, the Corrupted and Dark Bishop and the Corrupted and Warfather. That is, as long as they have Canter to move out of range after attacking. Additionally, using a Micaiah rewarp or some similar strategy can easily leave enemies in no man's land, chilling in the middle of the map, 2 turns away from being able to reach anyone in your army. After 25 chapters of getting toasted by probably some of the smartest AI in any Fire Emblem game, these maneuvers feel cathartic more than cheesy or boring. Combine these tactics with leaving a couple units as sacrifices to go out in a blaze of glory, and this chapter really feels like an epic conclusion to one of the best games in the series. So that was a short overview of the final 4 chapters of Fire Emblem Engage, detailing what made these maps so fun for me. If there's one thing you take away from this video, please ignore any haters and play this game for yourself, preferably on Madden Classic mode. You'll experience some fantastic levels with some of the most finely tuned difficulty on the strategy gaming market. So that's it for me. Thanks for watching, folks. Leave a comment if you want me to cover anything else in the world of Fire Emblem.